within a city like Bangalore or many other cities, do we have a clarity as to how are we going to reduce this kind of a speed lowering, and what kind of planning is there? Because I know in even places like Italy, in Trieste, it's a very small town in the Adriatic coast. They have very nicely planned the city, the roads, and in such a way that you get a bus every 17 minutes, but it is optimized with a complex algorithm as to how you can minimize it and how you can get a assured transport and minimize the total number of trips it has to make. It's very well organized. Do we have those kind of capabilities in being built up in this country with respect to, or at least trying to get those kind of support from outside? So there's another point, because there are questions of how do you optimize a system, and as you go on increasing overlapping of a transportation system to improve the capacity, the price of a road goes up several fold if the moment you go to the next level, and if you go underground it goes even more. So are there something where the economy is quite okay when you try to discuss the questions with respect to the transportation system and its improvement? The other point is with respect to, there are a lot of good examples of how the governance has been done in cities, and your own book clearly brings out some excellent examples of governance, and governance specific to different areas. In one city you have pointed out the water system is very well managed. In another place the waste system is very well managed. Is there something which there with an analysis of why they are what they are? And is there a way we have a clear-cut understanding of what these reasons are in trying to ultimately come out with an optimality with regard to approaching a dealing with this kind of a thing? This is so because there are good examples, and in fact there are areas like the Surat earlier, the municipal commissioner, he made a change to the whole town itself. So there is an individual who makes a difference there. So there are systems which are, the models are very different with respect to how you try to deal with this. So that is another. The public-private partnership is another thing. We try to look at it in the context of the waste to energy, if you remember. And the main problem is, I don't think there's been a very successful exercise, the waste to energy, the public-private partnership. The second question is with respect to the private-public partnership with respect to waste to energy in contrast to the waste management itself. There is a little difference between the waste to energy, and the moment you bring in the waste to energy and the economics of the waste to energy question, the whole scenario, how do you deal with the waste itself changes. So are there any alternate, because we did that study and Dr. Ishal Alvalia, Mr. Ramachandran, they all reviewed that particular document. But the question central to the whole thing is this the way that we should go about in the context of waste to energy, or how do you deal with the waste management? Of course, the other details are all there. I don't want to go into this. The last point, which has not been touched, is with regard to the urban development with respect to the slums. What is the questions with relate to the slums? How are we going to deal with it? And we did address this question in the Bangalore governance report. How do we want to deal with it? I'm sure Dr. Sivaramakrishnan or somebody could illuminate us on this. So this is another important point. So with this, I would now throw open this for the discussion among the participants. And Dr. 1 minute, I'll just have Dr.
I limit myself to just a metropolitan management questions. I think it's important that we understand the background to this whole business of Metropolitan Planning Committee and the 74th Amendment. I think this background is described in what Partho referred to in this book, the management of mega cities. And I would certainly encourage people to go through this, mainly for the background. The second is, as one of the authors of the 74th Amendment, especially this particular provision, I must accept Mohanty's criticism. This is a half-baked, half-hearted amendment. The Metropolitan Planning Committee is a flawed design. There is really no point in having a committee with such an elaborate composition whose only purpose was to consolidate plans and send it to the state government. That, looking back, I would say, is downright silly. And I don't think such a provision merited inclusion in the Constitution. The third point is, yes, local self-government has to be the basis. Partho very rightly mentioned that Maharashtra is one of the few states where local bodies have a functional mandate. Just a few days ago, the Greater Bombay Corporation brought out the development plan for Bombay region and also the development control regulations. So far as I remember, there is no other municipal corporation in India which has brought out a plan for this region. I presume the interaction between the Bombay Municipal Corporation and the Bombay Metropolitan Region Development Authority in the preparation of this plan, there was some interaction. Whether it is adequate or not is a different matter. So in a way, it is heartwarming to note that there is at least one municipal corporation that has exercised its powers, though the constitutional amendment says town planning and urban planning is supposed to be a local body function. I think it's very important for us to understand that most of the questions we have talked about have to be within the framework of a governance which is participative, which is politically participative as well. And I feel that instead of the Metropolitan Planning Committee, we have suggested, can we think in terms of a Metropolitan Planning Council which is politically better in its composition and which is also politically accountable. No metropolitan area in the world is free of inter-municipal conflicts. But inter-municipal conflicts are decided by means of negotiation, and inter-municipal conflicts are also decided on the basis of an intelligent demarcation of what are metropolitan level issues and what are local level issues. I think the Indian people are capable of applying their mind to bring about this kind of an intelligent demarcation. Without that, merely kicking up everything to the state government level, I am afraid, is a needless abdication of responsibility and a needless abandonment of our own intelligence. Finally, Vaidehi mentioned about the jurisdiction of these metropolitan regions. It's only in Maharashtra that the region that has been defined as something more than 4,000 square kilometers cannot be altered without a resolution of the Maharashtra legislature. This, more than anything else, has prevented the Maharashtra government from tampering with the regional delineation itself, though it is based on physical planning. On the other hand, Bangalore, as Mr. Kasturirangan pointed out, from an 8,000 square kilometer elaborate report, they have brought it down to Bangalore Development Authority. On the one hand, the government of India was kneeling on them saying, have an MPC, have an MPC, have an MPC. The courts also, with a very poor understanding of the situation, said, we want an MPC by day after tomorrow kind of a judgment. And so Bangalore succumbed and said, let's have an MPC just for the BDA. Tamil Nadu keeps talking about expanding its jurisdiction. Kolkata does it sometimes this way, sometimes that way. I'm afraid we have reduced this whole business to a certain casualness. And I have to be very frank about this. And all this casualness has happened in spite of all of us professionals not speaking out at the right time. So I would say the metropolitan management, I agree with Ishir, this is extremely critical and you can address several individual questions, but you need a particular governance framework. You have amended the Constitution umpteen times. The 74th Amendment can also be amended without too much damage to the Indian Constitution. But it needs an application of mind, and therefore I would request that application to take place. Thank you.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, my name is Frank Samuel, and I work for GTZ in the urban sector here in India since 2 months now. I've worked in many other different contexts internationally and in German on urban development issues, and maybe you allow me a few observations and reflections on what I've heard here. So, first of all, talking about capacity building and urban governance, and listening to the presentations here, and I've attended other other similar events, it's quite striking for me, let's say, the general absence of the voice of the actual subjects, of the cities, of the local governments, of the other actors at the different levels of the states. So I have a bit of feeling that this is kind of talking about a kind of strange subject or animal which is not really participating in these discussions. So if this event would take place, let's say in Germany or in South Africa, talking about metropolitan regions, you would have some people from metropolitan regions participating, sitting on the panel, or people from cities. And this relates a little bit to this issue of local self-government and governance and capacity building, where I'm also a bit confused. Let's say India has the reputation of being the largest democracy in the world. In many places where local government or local self-government functions quite good, it doesn't function similarly well in all parts of the world, but there are some places where you have relatively well-functioning local self-government, and local government is normally somehow understood as a kind of nursery or laboratory for democracy. So many politicians start their careers at the local government level. So I've worked for many years in a small town in Romania, 200,000 inhabitants, with a very astute mayor who took initiatives in local, in urban development issues, did fantastic things in the city, and he became president of Romania very recently. You know the success stories of some mayors in Latin American countries, but also in countries like Germany, let's say, proving oneself as a politician is an important political issue. And this relates a little bit to this governance aspect, I think. So I've heard statements like people would demand better governance, or we need to empower governance structures. But what is governance? What are cities? These are people, let's say, people, citizens engaging themselves, taking their fate or their decisions, local decisions, in their own hand. And we have also heard that this is somehow missing. Let's say that people rather expect something to be delivered from government rather than taking an active stance and taking initiative on their own behalf. And I think this is one of the, from my point of view, I think this would be one of the main challenges, to get to a stage where people really take the initiative to engage themselves in local government issues. I don't know why this is not happening in India, let's say, as a democracy. Why is it so, this engagement at the local level so weak? I think this, from my point of view, should be one of the key questions in the long run. And also how to increase the number of people working in this field. So listening to the presentation this morning, Germany has less than 1/10 of the population of India, I think, but I think more than 10 times the people work in the local government sector in different aspects, so in different levels, at the local governments, in the cities, at the state levels, at the national levels, not to speak on all the capacity building providers circulating around this. So this is quite, one could even call it a kind of massive capacity building business in the local government sector, while in India I have the feeling this is limited and still emerging. And I think this is also another issue, how to provide incentives that this further develops and improves.